Get recruited into
Well,
this?
I was about to explain. My great-uncle was the first president of the Soviet Union. And because of that, my family was very closely followed in this country and basically used for purposes on this side of the Atlantic.
Okay, because there would have been some DNA associated with him, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, it seems like they always track the DNA.
They go along family lines, yes.
Yes, okay. So you were tracked, and then how did you get into it? Did they grab you, or?
Well, it wasn't like they grabbed me, but even from childhood, I can remember, even being 2 and 3 years old, where my grandmother's husband, who was a Mason, 33-degree Mason, would take me to areas where these other little children were being abused, threatened, all kinds of things happening with them. And even as I got older, I would be taken at night by what I thought at the time were aliens to various places for indoctrination and experimentation. And it wasn't until we moved to Long Island that it became pretty much a daily event.
Did your parents know about this?
Well, I'll tell you, my mother refuses to talk about it. I asked her to talk about certain things, if she'd be willing to talk publicly. She absolutely refused.
Mm-hmm.
And my father is very annoyed with me for even speaking about it and told me I had no right to do so.
Why do you think he's annoyed?
Well, he was involved in certain government projects back in the early 50s in New Mexico and West Texas. And for the first 3 years of my life, he was followed by military or Secret Service people. And to this very day, he refuses to discuss a lot of the information. Now, his mother was a Soviet spy, and in fact spent a lot of World War II traveling back and forth to Europe. And when she died, he took all of her passports, her information, photos, etc., and burned them in the fireplace before anybody could get a hold of them. So he's covering up a lot of stuff. He doesn't talk much at all. And I'm positive that both of them know more than they're willing to say.
Stewart, how would you describe your relationship with your parents right now?
Very strained. You know, we speak about certain topics, and then there's certain topics we don't speak about.
Do they live close to you?
They're about 25 minutes away from me.
Oh, very interesting. So you think that it was von Neumann and a Draco that actually ran the whole program at Montauk?
That I knew of.
Did they report to anybody that you think of?
The only ones that I can imagine, now I have no idea, proof that they reported to it, but I know von Neumann reported to many people in Germany and also within upper echelons of this government. You see, at a certain level, there really is no government. There's just one government all over the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And these political parties and different governments and nations are just for public consumption.
Do you think Dr. John von Neumann is still alive?
I was told, at least up to about 3 years ago, that he was, but he'd probably be an extremely old man by now.
Yeah.
I understood he lived in upstate New York.
We actually have some pictures, supposedly, of him in upstate New York, and he looks pitiful.
Yeah, I imagine so. And I remember back in the early 90s, Preston was still getting communication from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is true. Okay, so he supposedly tapped into or reported to the secret government.
Yeah, but at both sides of it. In other words, the Illuminati, who really control the Earth government, have different factions among themselves as well. They're by no means all brotherly and peaceful with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are factions, each trying to outdo the other.
I see. So somehow you got recruited into Montauk at an early age. I guess you were still into high school, right?
I was about 14.
Okay, and you said there were daily visits?
Yeah, they would come for me at night, and what they have is the ability to shift time and space so that point A and point B become one point.
Mm-hmm.
And they would actually create an energetic connection from where I was to the Montauk Project.
Even back then?
Even back then. They've had this technology for a very long time.
Oh. Okay, because that's a little unclear in our discussions with Al as far as how long they actually had it. Was this the chair that was at Montauk?
Well, the chair was used for the psychics. They used these chairs to create vortices or gateways to other dimensions and times.
Would those gateways, though, be the same ones that were used to get you?
A form of it. See, here's the thing. When you create an opening from one dimension to another, that would be a vortex. Mm-hmm. When you create a shortcut from point A to point B within the same reality, that's a wormhole. So what they actually created was wormholes around the Earth to connect to whoever they needed for that moment.
Okay. Did they come under the guise of an extraterrestrial, though?
Sometimes they did, especially in the very beginning. And I guess that was just from my understanding until I realized what was going on, and then they no longer had to put up that charade.
Why would they do that in the first place?
Because in the event a person becomes conscious during the abduction scenario, it's better that they see an alien that they don't understand and who has no legal responsibility on the Earth, rather than you wake up and you see a military person that you can identify and then becomes the responsibility of the government.
So were they, in this process, preparing you for the work that you're going to do at Montauk?
Yes, they were. I was already genetically prepared for it. Mm-hmm. What they were trying to do was enhance that and see how far they could go with it.
So there must have been many, many others that they did the same thing with.
Supposedly there were, but many of them didn't survive. Mm-hmm. I am told that, as I mentioned earlier, that less than 1% survived.
Well, do you know any others who have survived?
I have met many people who claimed to be in the Montauk Project.
Okay.
Now, all of them that I would see, I would know if they were telling the truth or not, because there's a certain resonance or signature in the energy field that I recognize. Mm-hmm. Now, at least half of the people I met who claimed to be part of that were not. Now, that's not saying that they're being deceptive. It means they might really believe they were.
Yeah.
And part of the electromagnetic programming that's being beamed out through much of the planet has these little scenarios that are implanted in your mind pattern that you can believe are real.
Yeah, and I mean, that could be part of the misinformation campaign.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of the channeling is that's out there. Channeling is basically coming from satellites. Now,
all channeling?
95% of it. That started back in the mid-'60s, way before Montauk.
Yes.
And that was part of a disinformation dissemination program by the NSA, so that people would believe that there were space brothers coming to save us, and so you wouldn't really have to do anything but just wait until you went into the fourth or fifth dimension and life would be good and wonderful, when in fact it was a clever ploy to get you to just not do anything. Huh. It was also a way for them to see how transmitted satellite information would be received through the brain and how it would come out. And they would infiltrate all of these groups and then be able to fine-tune the way they transmit the programming.
You know, as I think of the logistics of channeling, how would they know exactly when the receiver is ready to do his channeling? Because I've seen some of it. In fact, I've seen many people channel. And it's at their time, at their will. They sit down and they say, now we begin, and then it goes. Mm-hmm. How would the government know at that time to turn on the program?
You have to remember that the program is usually turned on when the person is sleeping and downloaded into their brain. And then, when there are certain triggers which are transmitted by ground transmission, the person then goes into their act. Now, most of the time, that's about 95% of the channeling that's done on the Earth now is from satellite transmission. There's a very small percentage that is not. My feeling is, and what we learned at Montauk, is that the ones who channel real entities is kind of low level anyway, because no high level entity needs to take over your body in order to transmit information. If they're so high level, they can just instantly download into your mind and you know it instantaneously without giving up who you are, your persona. So the act of channeling